Morning, I'm Staff Chief Political Reporter and I'm here with the Leader of Opposition, Judith Collins. Good morning, Judith. How are you?
Good morning, Henry. I'm great, thank you.
You put out a statement today saying the Australian border with New Zealand, or our border with Australia, should basically be opened right away. But the Trans-Tasman bubble, we've been talking about it for almost a year probably, should be opened right away. Does that involve some level of risk? I mean, we can't control their systems like we can control ours, can we?
Well, what's interesting is that clearly when COVID comes in, it comes through the managed isolation quarantine facilities. It's the most likely place it's coming from. And what we're also seeing is that at the moment Australians coming here or New Zealanders coming back from Australia are treated in exactly the same way as if they came from COVID hotspots like the United States or California in particular. And that's actually taking up a lot of space in the managed isolation facilities. That's 40%. That would actually free up a lot of space for people. But the other thing is if Australia can have a Trans-Tasman bubble with New Zealand and let New Zealanders go to Australia from October last year, if they can manage it, surely we can manage it. And, we've got places like Tasmania in Australia where they haven't had a COVID case in 3 months, and we're treating people who could come and be part of our tourist industry again as though they're coming from a COVID hotspot. So we've got, in the South Island in particular, we've got places like Queenstown, we've got the west coast of South Island, the Franz Josef Glacier, all those places just absolutely crying out for tourists. And, Australians are about 40% of our tourist industry. It would actually be, I think, a huge win for New Zealand.
And would you basically have it that MRQ could snap back on if there was an outbreak in Australia?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like the Australians did to us when we had the latest lockdown, the cases. They snapped it back on, temporary closure, and now they're back open again.
Does it feel like the government might be quite close to doing something like that?
Well, I don't know, because I actually think that they just need to get on with it. Because, look, we pride ourselves on being better than Australia in lots of things. Well, we clearly have not been able to be as good in telling people when they can get their vaccines, because the Aussies have got a system. You can go on their website, put in your details, who you are, everything about your risk factors, and you'll get an approximation of when you'll get your vaccine. We don't have that yet. Hopefully they'll announce that or something similar. But in the meantime, we seem to be so risk averse that we end up actually destroying people's livelihoods. So, people losing their jobs, the mental health issues from that, all this is important too. And we can do it. We've been doing it now since, Christmas with the Cook Islands. Why can't we do it with Australia?
The National Party review, will you implement everything that's recommended in it?
Yeah, well, it's a review that's actually for the board, and the board is, obviously...
You're a member of the board.
I am indeed, but I'm not the only member of the board. And the other thing is that the review does talk about some constitutional changes and recommendations for the National Party. So those will go through to the members of the National Party, and the board will decide whether or not we deal with these in our general meetings, AGMs, or whether or not, with the conferences that we have regionally and national, or whether or not there's a constitutional meeting. So, there's quite a lot around that sort of thing.
We understand one of the recommendations is around term limits for people on the board. Could this mean the end of Peter Goodfellow's kind of reign as president? It's been there a long time.
Well, I'm not going to go down the detail of it, but I think it is important that the board actually represents and presents these sorts of details around constitutional issues to the members themselves. They don't need me to do it, filter it for them.
Is it true that there's a reading room for your MPs so they can access it to read the review, but they can't, take it away with them to read it?
I can tell you what I can tell you, which is that, number one, it's a report commissioned by the board for the board. And therefore, it wasn't something that was written with a general view of everybody being able to access it and being able to read it, and the media having it and having a good look in it.
I was talking about the media, I'm talking about your own MPs.
Every one of our MPs has, and understand it wasn't a caucus report, it was written for the board, for the board's purposes. So what every MP is able to read the report in full, and there's no two versions. There have been media reports of two versions. This is totally wrong. There is one report, and that report is able to be read by the MPs. And we don't have copies being sent out because it's actually it's not written for that. It's a very hard-hitting, very confronting report, which I think MPs do need to read. And I think that it's something that I read it and I thought, wow, it's good that someone's being, this report's so confronting.
Are you that worried about your caucus leaking, though, that you can't disseminate copies?
Well, it's not my report. It's the board's report, written for the board. But I think it is important that there are statements that are made in the report where people, may find them quite very confronting. But also, I don't want our caucus being distracted from their job of trying to get Trans-Tasman bubble, going down social housing lines, getting on to the job. And one of the things that was really clear from the report, and this I'm happy to share, is that when the National Party gets distracted to talk about the National Party, we're not winning voters over.
Do you believe, after reading the report yourself, that decisions made by you during your leadership were a factor in the loss?
I think that I made mistakes, and I think that there were a lot of mistakes made. One of the things that I do know is that even where I made mistakes, I didn't actually mean to make them. And I think that's really true for a lot of people. So we had a lot of things go wrong. And
that's a definition of a mistake, right?
Yeah, well, a mistake is something that went wrong. It went wrong. But I also know that there was some bad behaviour which is being called out in that report. That is going to be confronting for some people. And some of those people are not in caucus anymore. Some are. Maybe they're going to read that and they're going to say, maybe that was me. Maybe that was. That's going to be confronting for some people. And I think it is important that everyone reads that. But what I've seen this year in particular from the caucus is a real willingness to work hard, to be professional, and to focus on their portfolios of work. And obviously this is hard for people to read this stuff sometimes.
On that, you said you definitely made mistakes. Can
Absolutely.
You say any of the mistakes that you made?
Oh, I don't think I need to go down them anymore.
Going down the obesity thing.
Yeah, I should. Well, actually, I'm very happy to say I should not have picked up the temptation thrown out there. And that was like, but
press conference, something went wrong, and it's kind of got
things
worse and worse.
Things do get like that, and of course, I wish I hadn't, but
Your a new poll out from the Callum Clark Foundation yesterday said that 69% of Kiwis support either decriminalisation of cannabis or full legalisation. What's the National Party position on this? Is it all over after the referendum on legalisation, or do you think there's room for some kind of movement there?
Well, I think we've de facto have decriminalisation. The government's already effectively done it without going to a referendum. You see it with the way that police now can almost not to prosecute anyone for cannabis offences. You see the police pulling out from doing the annual cannabis roundup in the forests. We've seen the party pool legislation go through. It's effectively decriminalised now. I think that the public made it very clear, well, to me it made it very clear in their referendum. We had all this polling telling us that it was all going to be, people were going to say legalise cannabis. Actually, they didn't. In the end, and it's all very well now for Chloe Swarbrick and others to come and revisit it, or Helen Clark to revisit it. Well, actually, they lost the referendum. It's like me wanting to revisit an election. We lost it, so just get over it.
If the decriminalisation members' bill was to come up from the Greens or the Māori Party, would you expect everyone on the National to vote against it? Would you whip against it?
Well, we'd have to discuss it. I think that the National Party's position is pretty clear on cannabis, and we've made it very plain that we don't think this is going to help people's health or anything else. But we would obviously look at a bill. We always treat things seriously, and we always discuss things. So I'd leave it to our caucus.
You say the National Party position is clear, but your health spokesman and your deputy leader, Shane Reti, was on Radio Wātea yesterday, and he said he kind of pointed to the Portugal model on decriminalisation. He said we need to have a lot of dialogue on it. It sounds like he could actually be kind of won over by decriminalisation.
Yeah, so Shane has been very clear to me that he's sort of a bit misrepresented in that one. I mean, Radio Wātea, he's done his interview with them, and it's what's up on the website is not quite
Right.
what he was saying. So
You've had a chat with him about this, and you've made clear.
well, he's said to me, "Oh, this is not quite what I said." So he's very clear about it.
So it sounds like it was a caucus discussion, but you would probably veer towards voting against any bill that came up in decriminalisation.
We'd have to see the bill, but I don't see a great movement in the National Party caucus to change our stance on it.
Just finally, vaccines. Just a bit more detail on the exact time frame from the Prime Minister today. Is what you want basically right now, like someone can go on, type their name in and find out what month they'll be vaccinated, or is that kind of unreasonable?
It's not unreasonable. If they can do it in Australia, why can't we do it? I think it's really important. This is what people want. People want to be able to make some plans for what they can do, travel or otherwise, and they do want to know that, we were told last year we were at the front of the queue to get vaccines. We clearly weren't in the front of the queue. There may be reasons for that, but that's not what we were told. And now we see the Australians being able to, New Zealanders living in Australia can go onto their website and find out when they're going to get a vaccine or close enough time to when they'd expect it. Well, why can't we do it here? I'm sure we can. I'm sure the government wants to do that. They just need to do it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.